Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Michelle Easton, and I'm president of the Clare, Boothe, Luce Center for Conservative Women. It is wonderful to be in a room full of all conservative women. We're happy to have you. This year marks the Luce Center's 30th year of preparing and promoting young conservative women to become leaders, and we're very grateful to Young America's Foundation's president, Scott Walker, for having us sponsor the luncheon at this year's NCSC, and for the special partnership we've had with Jamie and Jessica and other key staff throughout the years. Now today I have the great honor of introducing our speaker and my friend, Cleta Mitchell. Cleta's topic is, "It's better to be respected than liked." She's one of our favorite speakers at the Luce Center, and we've been honored to have her speak for us a number of times over the years. Now, please listen closely, because her advice for young women on how to be better conservatives and how to be successful professionally is very good. After serving in a major DC law firm for many years, Cleta Mitchell is now a senior legal fellow at the Conservative Partnership Institute. The Luce Center does monthly women's luncheons, CWN, with the CPI as well. And Cleta is also founder of the Election Integrity Network. As host of the weekly podcast, Who's Counting?, Cleta discusses all things related to fair and rigged elections. As a licensed attorney in Oklahoma and Washington, D.C., Cleta is a leader with so many accomplishments, including standing up to the harassment by President Obama's IRS during their targeting of Tea Party groups and other conservative organizations, like ours at Luce. Because of the national impact this work defending conservatives against the IRS had, we gave Cleta our 2013 Clare Boothe Luce Center Woman of the Year Award, and there's a picture of that in your program where we're presenting her with that award. Cleta also worked for the legal team in Georgia in 2020, the Trump legal team. She was elected to the Oklahoma House of Representatives from 1976 to 1984, and she practiced law in Oklahoma for 8 years before coming to Washington. In 1986, she was a candidate for lieutenant governor of Oklahoma, and she got 48% of the vote. And I don't know if you're going to tell the story about how after it all happened, you were happy. She was happy she lost. Cleta received her BA and Juris Doctor degree from the University of Oklahoma. She's been married for 40 years to a really cute former professional baseball player. She has a daughter and a granddaughter, and she currently resides in North Carolina. Now, Cleta, forgive me for doing this again, but Cleta has a book in her. We talked about all the things she has to share. We talked about maybe a title would be Things My Mother Taught Me. We would all love to read it, Cleta. Making time for writing a book is really, really hard, I know, because I just did it with How to Raise a Conservative Daughter. But I just want to say again, I hope you will, and if we can help you at the Luce Center, we certainly will. Now please join me in welcoming Cleta Mitchell.
Well, thank you, Michelle. It is always such a privilege and an honor for me to come and spend time with all of you wonderful young women. I know that you're going to learn a lot. You have been learning a lot at the conference, and I just am very grateful that you would share your time with me today at lunch. Everybody wants to be liked. Even the worst person that you know wants to be liked. Everyone wants to be loved and to find love. Looking for love in all the wrong places, is that the way the song goes? So we all grow up thinking about being liked, whether people are going to like us. Remember in grade school, all the notes you passed back and forth with your friends? Do you think she likes me better than she likes Susie? Do you like me better than you like Josie? And remember about the time you decided boys really weren't icky and you were saying, do you think that he likes me? Who do you think he likes? I mean, that's part of all of, at least it was when I was growing up. We all worry about whether people are going to like us, whether we're likable, lovable, and whether people will say about us, oh, I really like her. And yet, I would ask you, is that what we really ought to be aspiring to? To have everybody like us? A number of years ago, when I really first started thinking about this, my husband had a friend, this guy, and my husband's a great storyteller, and he tells these great stories, and I've heard all these stories a zillion times, but they still make me laugh about this friend of his who was pretty hapless, this guy, and he was always getting into messes, and it was very funny to hear my husband tell all these stories, because it didn't happen once, it happened over and over and over. Anyway, he died fairly early of a heart attack in his 40s, so we went to his funeral, and one of my husband's high school friends went with us, and as we were coming out of the funeral, we're standing on the steps of the church, and my husband's friend said, kind of not to anybody in particular, you know, I always liked Jim. I just could never find a reason to respect him. And it really got my attention. I started thinking about that and thinking about the differences between being liked and being respected. So we don't grow up with the idea about being respected. We don't pass notes to our friends in grade school saying, do you respect me? Do you think Johnny respects me? That isn't something that we ever really think about or talk about. So I'm going to talk about respect to you today. Number one, point one, it is more important and better to be respected than to be liked. And boy, is that a hard concept. That is a hard concept to think about. It's almost almost the opposite of everything we've been told, you know. Girls are, supposed to be liked and nice sugar and spice and everything nice. We're supposed to be liked. And how could it possibly be better to be respected than liked? And so I'm asking you, have you ever known someone, do you have people in your circle that you really like? She shares her clothes with you. She lets you wear her clothes. But, you can't really count on her. She is always late. She doesn't do her homework, so she wants to look at yours. I mean, she's just not somebody that, she's always up to something, but she's fun and all. And the question is, do you have a reason to respect her? And why is that? If the answer is no, why? It's because if you're raised properly, your parents, your church, the right values are taught to you. We've been taught by our parents and through the various institutions, if they're doing their job, we've been taught that there are certain characteristics of respectable people and that we are taught to adhere to those traits like honesty, integrity, truth, cleanliness, punctuality, reliability, steadfastness, faith. I mean, think about the characteristics of respectable people, the virtues of a respectable person. Think about that, those concepts. Now, if we really live our lives according to these virtuous concepts and characteristics, if we build our lives around principles of strength of character, we're not worrying about being liked. That isn't at the top of our list of things to be concerned about. We're concentrating on how to be better people, how to be a stronger person. We're trying to live up to those characteristics that are important in our lives. But all the time in our society, we are constantly bombarded with a different message. It's the message of popularity. It's the message of everybody liking us. In the beauty pageants, Don't we just love Miss Congeniality? Now, she's not the most talented. She may not be the best in the swimsuit or whatever the competition is, but she's voted on by her peers, and she gets a trophy also. Miss Congeniality. It's the idea that, well, you may not have all these other things, but we like you. We really like you. And we've all been faced with situations. I want you to think about situations you've been faced with in your own world, in your own life, where you've come face to face with a reality of having to do the right thing, even if it makes other people uncomfortable. And they might not like you if you stand up for the right thing. And I'm going to share with you a situation that was one of the most searing instances in my life about having to come face to face with this dichotomy of being liked versus respected. I moved to Washington, as Michelle said. I practiced law in Oklahoma, born and raised in Oklahoma. I am Sooner born and Sooner bred, and when I die, I will be Sooner dead. And I moved to Washington in the early 90s to be the lawyer for the national campaign and movement to limit the terms of members of Congress. And so as part of that, there were a number of lawsuits that ultimately found their way to the United States Supreme Court. And I had argued the term limits case before the Supreme Court of the state of Arkansas before it went to the U.S. Supreme Court. And the Attorney General of Arkansas had made it clear that if the case went to the United States Supreme Court, he wanted to argue the case. And at the time, I thought, well, you know, how bad can it be, right? He's the Attorney General. So we get to the term limits case is going to the Supreme Court. So we have what is called the moot court. But before this, I'd had a call from, and I was running this little nonprofit legal foundation on term limits, and I got a call from his chief of staff saying, the general has some questions about constitutional law. And he started asking me questions that were so basically, they're so basic that I thought, well, this is kind of scary. You know, you ought to have learned that in the 7th grade. So I literally, you know, I hired a professor of constitutional law to go to Arkansas and to try to give him a mini course on the 10th Amendment and various provisions of the Constitution. So then it comes time, because that's how woefully not smart he was. And so it comes time to do there's always, before a Supreme Court argument, there are organizations in Washington who have what they call a murder board or a moot court, where they bring the people who are going to argue the case before a group of lawyers who know the case, et cetera. And so the people then start peppering them with questions, just like what happens in the argument. When you get to oral argument at the U.S. Supreme Court, they don't let you talk. They just ask you a lot of questions, interrupting. So you really have to know everything and be good on your feet, et cetera. So the Attorney General gets up in this murder board, the moot court, the day before the argument. And the more he did, the more questions he couldn't answer, the worse it got. And to the point that it was clear that he was a walking disaster. He didn't know the case. He didn't know the case law. It was terrible. The argument before the U.S. Supreme Court is the next day. And so I came out of that. Now, mind you, I mean, there were 23 million Americans who had voted for term limits for members of Congress in 22 states. And I had been working on this with many people from around the country for several years, and everything hinged on this case, on this argument. So I went home that night thinking, what am I going to do? Am I going to say something? Am I going to try to fix this? I tried to talk to his chief of staff. I had tried to talk to his chief of staff about this. I said, you know, your boss is not up to this. And he goes, you tell him. So the next morning, we're having, we gather to meet for coffee in preparation for going over to the Supreme Court. And I said to myself that morning, I said, you are not running for Miss Congeniality. You have either got to say something and try to get something done about this. And it just happened that the lawyer who had really written the brief for the state of Arkansas was here in Washington, was part of our moot court team. He had been in the Solicitor General's office for the United States and had 9 oral arguments before the U.S. Supreme Court. And he knew this stuff cold. It wasn't like we didn't have a better option. And so I went in to say, General, I'd like to talk to you. And he had his copy, said, all right. And I said, you really didn't do very well yesterday. And I think you should let Paul do the argument because he wrote the brief, he knows the cases, he's argued 9 times before the U.S. Supreme Court, and he can do this. And I said to him, I said, if you win, if we win, it's going to look good because you brought in the best. But if you do the argument and you lose, we lose, everybody's going to blame you. And he looked at me, and he drank a cup of coffee, and he turned around and walked out of the room. And he did the argument, and the very first question out of his mouth, out of the Supreme Court, was a question that I had said to him yesterday, you're going to get this question. So here's the question, and here's the answer. That's the first question he got, and he looked like a deer in the headlights. And we all just went like this, and he insisted on doing it. And I will tell you something. We lost that case 5-4. We shouldn't have lost it. Clarence Thomas wrote a wonderful dissent in the case on the 10th Amendment. But I can go to my grave knowing I did everything I could do. I'm not running for Miss Congeniality. And believe me, if looks could have killed, he would have killed me. So the question is, are you running for Miss Congeniality? I'll tell you another story. My daughter, I can't remember what grade she was in, 7th or 8th grade, when the Monica Lewinsky, Bill Clinton scandal broke. And so she's in her family life class here in Washington, D.C. And the teacher says, well, you've heard about all of this, and it's an all-girls school. And the teacher says, well, you've all heard about this. And how many of you think that President Clinton should resign? And my daughter raised her hand. And she said, the teacher asked why. She said, well, the shame of it, if he were president in any other country, he would have to resign immediately. And then how many of you think that he should not resign? And so all these hands shot up. Well, we're in Washington, D.C., and the Washington Post, and all these people are, they haven't proved anything, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, so my daughter is telling me this story later, and I said, the mom's question, how did that make you feel? And she just kind of looked at me and she said, I'm right, they're wrong. And fast forward a few months later, when the blue dress is discovered, now this is all before your time, so you're going to have to go look this up. But basically, it was proved that Monica Lewinsky was telling the truth. And so I asked my daughter, I said, so how do you feel about this now? Because you were the one that stood up and said, she said, I always knew I was right. But it's that. You're the only one in the room who raises your hand. Are you willing to be the only one who raises your hand and ask the professor, is that your opinion or is that a fact? Are those facts that you're giving me or is that your opinion? It has to do with being respected, and even when it may make others uncomfortable. So then my daughter was in high school. A few years later, I decided I really had succeeded in raising at least a strong-willed daughter. And they were having some problems among the girls in the class, surprise. And she said something about one of them, and I said, well, I thought, she's a really nice girl. And my daughter looked at me and she said, Mom, nice is overrated. And so I decided maybe I had been successful. It is important to be respected And the Bible says a virtuous woman is more precious than rubies. So it's more important, rule number one, it's more important to be respected than liked. Number two, respect is a quality that you can only earn. You can't buy it, you can't command it, you can't demand it. It is earned. It's earned by how people perceive you. If you are respectable, respect-able, it is totally up to you. Totally up to you. When I was first learning to play golf a few years ago, my husband said, I got some tips for you. So here are the 3 tips for a beginning golfer, which is a great game for women, by the way. I highly recommend it. So you may be thinking he's going to tell me, okay, how to putt, how to use a 7-iron, all that. No, he said, here are the 3 rules for learning to play golf. 1, dress properly. Well, that's great, shopping opportunity, right? Number 2, know the etiquette, not the rules, but the etiquette. How you rake your traps, where you leave the rake. Fixing your divots and fixing someone else's. Not walking in anybody's line, not talking when somebody's getting ready to hit the ball. They're not written down anywhere. That's just the etiquette of golf. And number 3, don't hold anyone up. Know when it's time to pick up your ball and go on. Because don't be so focused on your game that you're not able to understand that you're playing with other people and there are people behind you. But know when to pick up and move on. And so I think those are good tips in life. Number 1, dress properly. You all dress great. I was doing a program a number of years ago teaching some young people about lobbying the state legislature. It was back when I was in Oklahoma. And one of the things that I said was to dress properly. When you go to the Capitol, you're going to meet people you don't know. What do they say? You've got 10 seconds to make a first impression when you meet somebody. And I was saying, you should dress properly and all. And some young woman raised her hand and she said, well, I kind of resent that. I think that I ought to be able to wear a clown costume and they ought to listen to what I have to say. I said, well, that theoretically might be true, but I promise you that if you show up in a clown costume, they're going to be thinking about your frickin' clown costume and they're not going to hear one thing that's coming out of your mouth. So this is important dress in a respectable manner. That's the first rule. I used to have when my daughter and her friends would come over for a slumber party, I would teach them how to shake hands. Has anyone ever taught you how to shake hands? I'll be happy to stand at the back and shake your hand as you leave. Because I promise you, you need to know how to shake hands. You need to look people in the eye, firm grip, hi, I'm Cleta Mitchell, nice to meet you. None of this stuff. None of this little weak, don't do that. It's part of being respectable, dress and act in a respectable manner. That's number 1. Number 2, know the etiquette. Now, what does that mean? And I know what it means in golf. In life, it means knowing what's going on around us and what your role is. My daughter's commencement speaker at college was former George H.W. Bush's Secretary of State, James Baker. I always figure if someone gives a commencement speech and you can remember any of it 15 minutes later, it was a really successful speech. Well, that's been 10 years ago. Here was his topic of his speech. Leadership is knowing what to do and then doing it. Think about that for a minute. Think about the fact that you're going to be a leader and you have no idea what to do in a tough situation, no idea. Now, not many people are going to follow you. But if you know what to do, but you don't have the courage to do it, you don't have the wherewithal to do it, you can't be a leader. Leadership is knowing what to do and then doing it. And in life situations, that is exactly what it takes to earn respect, to know what to do, and then to be able to do it, even if it makes some people not like you, makes some people uncomfortable. But knowing that you've done what needs to be done is part of being respectable and earning respect. And number three is don't hold anyone up. What does that mean? It means don't be so focused on yourself and what you're doing, what your game in life is, that you're unable to be aware of and be part of supporting and helping people around you. It means that you may not be able to always do exactly what you want. So in life, other people will respect you if you are respectable. They will not respect you if you don't earn it. It's completely up to you. And number three, respect renews love. Now, I presume that many of you would like to find a nice husband, get married, have children. I have found over the years, I don't care where I speak to young women, that is always top of mind, which is perfectly appropriate. The most important decision you'll make in your life is who you marry. Who your life partner is. And you may be madly in love with somebody, but you need to ask yourself, do I respect him? Do I respect him? And what is it about him that you respect? His work ethic, his honesty, his faithfulness, his integrity. I know a woman in North Carolina, she and her husband had probably been married, 50, 60 years at this point. She told me this story about why she married him, when she knew that he was the one for her. They were in college, and they were on their way. They were driving, he had a car. They were driving to some event or party or something, and he stopped and got gas, fill up, and they're all dressed up. And he pays for the gas, and it wasn't as sophisticated as it is now at the gas pump, 50 years ago. And so he gets back in the car, they're driving down the road, and all of a sudden he says, I think I shortchanged that. I don't think I paid the right amount. I think I didn't pay them enough. And so he said, we're going to be late, but I got to go back. So he turns the car around and goes back and goes in and says, here's the rest of the money I owe you. I'm so sorry. I didn't pay you the full amount. And she said, that's when she knew. This is who I want to raise my children with. Because that is how he earned her respect and made her fall really in love with him. And I think that that's really important, whether you're in a marriage. And I would say this about loving the place where you work. I've given what I call my sugar packet speech, so many times I finally named it. To people who want me to go to lunch, it's always over a meal, breakfast, lunch. People want to talk to me for advice about their careers, about their jobs. And so I finally figured out, because there's always a common thread, I hate where I'm working because of this, this, and this, and I want to go someplace where I don't have this, this, and this. So I started taking the sugar packet deal, and so I'd pick out the white sugar packets, and I'd lay them on the table, and I'd say, okay, you want to leave where you are because 1 white sugar packet, 2 white sugar packet, 3 white sugar packet, representing the 3 things. I got to get out of here because of this, this, and this. A, B, and C. Then I pick up the blue sugar packets, the fake sugar packets, and I say, so you're going to go someplace, and then you don't have A, B, and C. I take those off the table. But now, instead of A, B, and C, you don't have that. But now, blue sugar packet, blue sugar packet, blue sugar packet. You've got D, E, and F. Now, you didn't have those bad things when you're at the other place, but now you've got them. Now what are you going to do? So here's my advice. Then I take out the yellow ones or the pink ones. And this is X, Y, and Z. These are principles. You need to work in a place where you respect your leadership, where they are honest. You need to figure out what are the X, Y, and Z principles that are important to you. Because no matter where you work, you're going to have an A, B, and C. You're going to have a D, E, and F. But you can survive those as long as you have X, Y, and Z. As long as the principles of honesty. My way of thinking, if I ask any person then, what are the things that are most important to you in a workplace? it'll always be the same. I want to be treated fairly. I want to be respected. I want to have work that's interesting. I want to work for people who are honest. You'd be surprised at the number of places where those things are not present. You need to respect your employer and the place where you work. They have to earn it. That will renew your love for the place where you work. It's just the same as with a life partner. Your life partner, through the respect that he earns, will cause you to love him more and more through the years. So I will just tell you that when you're choosing that life partner, when you're choosing a great place to work, you really definitely need to think in terms of, do I respect him? Do I respect the place where I work? Do I respect my employer? And if you don't have if you're not in a place, whether it's in a relationship with another person or a relationship with a work environment, you will be miserable. I guarantee it, you will be miserable. So, in my view, respect is the most essential value in our daily lives. It is important for you to be a person who earns the respect of others. It's important to choose to spend your lives with and around people that you respect. So remember, it's better to be respected than liked. Respect can only be earned. To get it, you must earn it. And number 3, respect renews love. And I pray that you are not running for miscongeniality. Thank you so much. Now, I'm told that I'm able to answer questions if people have questions. Are they to go to the microphone?
Hello.
Hello.
My name's Nectaria. I go to California Lutheran University. I've experienced a lot of disrespect from people, even though I would consider myself a respectful person. Like you said, it's better to be respected than liked. So what do I do when I'm like on an athletics team? I do so many different clubs at my school. What do I do when I'm not receiving respect, but I'm doing something that I love? It's kind of, like you said, it's miserable to be in a place where you're not respected. But how do I continue to do those things even though I'm not receiving respect back from other people?
So why do you think that is? What do you think is generating that?
I think the people around me are not mature.
So they're
That's
jealous because you're doing all these things and they want to do them and they don't like it that you're, well, you just have to say, get over it, sweetie. Just keep doing what you're doing. Honestly, that you can be, I'm not suggesting being obnoxious to people, but you cannot let that deter you from doing what you know to be doing. You just have to keep doing what you know that you need to do. And be nice to them, bless their hearts. That's all you.
Great, thank you.
Hi, my name is Tessa. I just graduated from St. Louis University in Missouri. I'm originally from Edmond, Oklahoma.
Oh, wow.
So, fellow Okie.
Yeah.
I've noticed, especially on my campus, that respect has been replaced by tolerance. I've gotten in trouble before where I have not been, quote unquote, tolerant of somebody, even though I said, I respect you as a human being, I give you the dignity. But how do we move that line back from tolerance is better than respect?
Well, tolerance is a term and a virtue that has been much abused by the left. And their idea of tolerance is not really tolerating us and our views. It is forcing us to accept, or trying to force us to accept, actions, lifestyles, views, philosophies that we do not find acceptable, that are different from ours. And I remember once meeting a woman who had been a Hollywood writer, and through the years she'd become conservative, and she said, in Hollywood we embraced every kind of diversity except a difference of opinion. And that is where we are today. And so I think when people are, I don't know what the context is, but certainly people who are trying to try to force you to, when they're saying be tolerant, they're basically saying accept, you have to embrace my lifestyle, which is different from yours. I think you just have to continue to say, I respect all human beings. No, actually, you don't respect all human beings. You don't. They have to earn it. You just say, you have your views, I have mine. And I'll tolerate yours, you tolerate mine. I think that we have to push back and not let them make us defensive because we thoroughly disagree with their lifestyle, their views, the things that they're trying to impose upon us. And I don't envy all of you, believe me. I don't envy the world in which you live on the college campus. And I know it isn't easy. And that's one of the reasons that I'm more committed than ever to tell you, you really don't care if all these people like you. And I promise you that if you just stand your ground, they may not like you, but they will grudgingly respect you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Zoe. I am from Colorado. I go to the University of Colorado in Boulder.
Oh, lucky you.
Yeah, it is the California of Colorado. It's the San Francisco of Colorado. But I come from a different area of Colorado, so it's a bit different. But anyways, I'm doing a double degree, and one of my degrees is in vocal performance. So in the arts, it's especially liberal, and I kind of experienced the same thing that she was discussing. The minute they find out you're a Christian or that you disagree with them, they'll call you every name in the book. So what I was going to ask you is, I respect all of my. I don't know if I want to use that word. I'm kind to everyone to my very best, I'm kind to everyone that I meet. And maybe this goes into two questions. I'm going to try to put it into one. But how would you define respect? Because I have my own definition. But if respect is earned, and also like teachers growing up would be like, oh, if we respect everybody, but if respect is earned, it's like, no, we don't. We're kind to everyone. So what's the difference between kind to a stranger and respecting someone?
Well, being kind to a stranger is just being a normal, nice human being. We're all God's children, and all of us have sinned. We know that. But being kind to a stranger is just, that's just good manners. But respect is much deeper than that. I mean, you can't, if someone is engaged in a lifestyle or they have, abhorrent political views that you find objectionable and think are destroying the country, you don't have to respect. You don't have to respect the person. You can accept that this is their opinion. These are their views, but. Look, I don't know. I mean, it's possible to have respect for people of differing views. That's possible, but they have to earn that respect. And the way they have to earn it is by also saying that they understand that you have a different viewpoint. That you have a different viewpoint, and they have to be willing to allow you to express that. That's my biggest concern today, is that, and particularly your generation. You look at the polling data. I was looking at something yesterday and then again this morning about how, 55% of college students say they think it's okay for the government to try to control misinformation. Well, I have a hard time thinking that somebody who thinks that. But that is a big problem. I just think that everybody's not going to like you, and everybody's not going to be nice to you, and you just have to stand your ground. This is what I stand for. This is what I believe. You have a different view. I'm going to be perfectly happy for you to express your views as long as you are happy for me to express mine. And, they've taken all this to the sciences, the hard sciences. It used to be restricted to, the sociology department, but now it's fine arts, it's everywhere.
Yeah, I've actually noticed, like, almost everyone that I go to school with, they're all just like, oh yeah, we should, misinformation, we should, silence people. And I was like, well, who's in control? So my definition of respect that I wrote down was supporting people and valuing their authority to speak with validity, even if you disagree with them. That's my definition. I don't know what you think
Well,
of that.
to me, that's tolerance.
Okay.
And that's different from respect. I mean, tolerance is, all right, I'll tolerate your ability to speak, and you tolerate my ability to speak and act and all, within a certain bounds of normal behavior, which is also not necessarily. I mean, look, there's been this effort for many decades now. Michelle and I go way, we were old. We've been through this for many decades. But to erase norms, and the things that we would call virtues of honesty, punctuality, things that are, when you're punctual, you're being respectful of someone else's time. And, but look, there's a big, I read all these things where they say that speaking proper grammar is racist. Well,
So is math, apparently.
and math is apparently
Math
racist.
is very racist.
Look, I mean, that's a way to, I think that's a way to continue to enslave people. I do. I think it's a way to, I don't think it's not benign, but you just have to realize that they're coming at you, they're coming after you, and you are in the worst part of it at this particular point in your life. And hopefully you can get through it without being too scarred and without losing your sense of responsibility and all the traits and characteristics and strength of character that you know to be true. That there are enduring values. And there are people who don't want us to think that there are any enduring values, that they're all up for grabs. And that is a real disservice to our society. I think it's particularly a disservice to women.
Thank you so much.
Good luck.
Hello,
Hi.
name is Amanda Hall. I'm currently studying electrical engineering at the University of Texas at Austin, Arlington. And I guess my question to you is regarding your stance on the Me Too movement and
On the what?
The Me Too movement.
Oh, yeah.
And I guess as like most of us women, we do not identify with the current progressive feminists, but we all can agree with, supporting women and uplifting our voices, and why, as us conservative women, or at least on the Republican side, why we so easily, disregarded women's voices, and instead of, supporting the Me Too movement, why we then created the Him Too movement, and just kind of, with your experience as a lawyer, how hard it is to actually prove assault, and why we are instead, uplifting women's voices instead of, disregarding them.
Well, look, I mean, one of the things that is true and has been true, I read a lot of, I don't know if any of you all ever read Ken Follett and Pillars of the Earth and that series. I read a lot of sort of books about medieval history, both fiction and nonfiction. And, I always think about the fact that for centuries, women couldn't travel without male companionship because, why? Because they would be set upon. They would be raped. They would be killed. And so women, historically, this is historically a fact. And it is a fact that women are more vulnerable. And so, I mean, all of us have had experiences. We always knew, and when I was in high school, we knew which male teachers you didn't go in to see after class, at the end of the school day, unless you took somebody with you. And that's not right. But at the same time, I remember going back to the Monica Lewinsky situation, when that first broke, the women senators, women members of Congress, the then Secretary of State, two cabinets, other secretaries, women, stood in the White House driveway and attacked the revelations about that Bill Clinton had a relationship, a sexual relationship with the White House intern, and attacked attacked everybody who was saying that. They never apologized. They never came back and said, hey, we were sorry, we were misled, he lied to us. Now, they went in, he assured him that nothing had happened. They came out and they said, we believe him, and it all had to do with their political views. And basically, that hasn't changed. That really, to my way of thinking, it hasn't changed, because what about the people who, the woman who said that Joe Biden had assaulted her? Whatever happened about that? Did all those people stand up and say, well, we believe her? No, they didn't. So the Me Too movement, I think, is, in some ways, it's really good, but I also will tell you that I think there have been a lot of false accusations based on, all of that directive that was given by the U.S. Department of Education to all the college campuses in America, that they basically had to deprive males of their due process rights if they were accused of sexual assault. I mean, so these are thorny, complicated issues. I don't think that we can say, look, we don't want men molesting women. We don't want handsy professors. We don't want all of those bad things. But I think we've made an enormous amount of progress. But I just find it so interesting that it's okay as long as you don't accuse a pro-abortion leading male politician, because then they will not rally around the woman. They'll believe him, or they'll ignore her.
Okay. But do you think with us, I guess, not siding with the Me Too movement, that I guess we have progressed as women in our rights, but do you think that it has actually suppressed us and our voices?
I don't think it's suppressed our voices, and I don't think it's a question of siding with or not siding with the Me Too movement. I think we have to, I don't think you can say, believe all women, don't believe all men. Mm-hmm. I think it is a step by, I think it's that, I do think that the Me Too movement brought a lot of things out into the open about some really bad people, mm-hmm. But I also think that we have to be careful not to do with anything, like we just don't go too far with it. Mm-hmm. We have to be willing to say, everybody in America is entitled to due process. Unless you're President Trump and you're not entitled to any due process. But I do think that it's important that we not get so carried away that we become totalitarians about any of these things.
Okay.
Anything else? All right. You're not running for Miss Congeniality. Thank you all very much.